Stay more comfortable, more concealed, and in the stand longer with Osseo gear. Premium camouflage apparel created for bow hunters by bow hunters. Osseo's revolutionary patented camo patterns and innovative features are designed to keep whitetail bow hunters totally invisible and dead quiet. Elevate your game with Osseo. Visit asiogear.com and take 20% off your purchase with code TRUTH20. Mobile hunters, our buddies over at Tethered are always innovating to keep us more mobile and in the game when it counts. From the Tethered One Sticks, the Fast Pack, to the Ultra Lock saddle, Tethered is always designing to increase comfort and utility while reducing bulk, weight, and fiddle factor of mobile hunting gear. And now, they've outdone themselves yet again by creating the carbon fiber forged Predator CFX platform, the latest fully featured mobile saddle platform that raises the bar for what's possible in mobile hunting gear. Whether you're new to saddle hunting or an old tree climbing veteran, go to tetherednation.com for all your saddle hunting gear. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today I got on my buddy, you know him, you love him, Mr. Joe Miles of Osseo Gear. What's going on, man?
Hey, bud, how you doing?
I'm good, man. Got to be honest, man, I'm living a little bit vicariously through you this past spring and summer with all your travels, dude. You made some trips, man. You got some miles on those boots already.
Yeah. It's hard for me to sit still, Clint. I like to go, and I really like to shoot. So it's hard to sit still.
Right, critters beware.
Yeah. And the wife, man, if I'm home more than about a week and a half, she starts that big scowl on her face, and don't you have somewhere to go?
That's awesome, man. Yeah, dude, you've been getting out, and we're gonna talk about that, man. Like that's one of the things. Like I don't know if it's something that comes with like as you get older or what, but like no matter what it is I'm doing, whether it's hunting or jiu-jitsu or whatever the case is, like I really just enjoy the diversity of experiences. You know, that's one of the reasons why I love to travel to hunt or like to drop into places to train whenever I'm, go for work or whether I'm on vacation or whatever. It's just seeing something that I haven't seen before, is always kind of the enticing thing for me, man. And you've been able to see a lot of country this past couple months.
Yeah. I've kind of been a nomad my whole life. Even we had a lease down in Georgia that was a big property. My dad was a big hunter, and I would constantly try and run the river, run the creek, get to the next hole or get to the next spot or go and explore this area we had never scouted before. And it's just always kind of been that. And, as I got older, more mature, it was checking out different parts of the world. And I mean, the one thing about it is when you get into an area that has like-minded hunters, it doesn't matter where you are, and whether you speak the same language or not. You're still speaking the same hunting language, and I've always found that super cool. I could be in the mountains in Turkey, right on the Syria border or something, and those guys that live in that terrain that love to hunt, they think just like me and you. And they have the same, and it doesn't matter that you don't speak the same language. It's a really cool experience. And I think there was a saying in Wolf of Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps, like the part 2 of that movie, that a fisherman can always spot a fisherman from afar. And it's the same thing with hunters, man. It's the same thing.
That's awesome, man. I've never hunted where there was a language barrier. When I was in Aruba for vacation and I was training, there was, I was one of the only maybe 2 people in the jiu-jitsu class that spoke English, right? So like the instructors spoke Spanish, everyone who was there spoke Spanish or some variety of, they have like a weird, I don't want to say weird, they have like a hodgepodge because it's a Dutch island. And so there's like certainly Dutch influences there, but of course, like you're 10 miles off the coast of Venezuela. Right. And so it's like, there's like a certain language that some of them speak. That's like a hodgepodge of like, almost like everything. It sounded like the one guy called it like bush something. It wasn't bush language. It was like bush Spanish or something like that, where it's like, unless you're from there, like you might not kind of pick up on it or whatever. But to the same point, it's like, when you have groups of people that are passionate about something and there's a language barrier, that passion ultimately becomes the language, is what I kind of found, because it's like, I'm training with these dudes and none of us, we couldn't understand each other necessarily, but we could kind of show each other technique or whatever. And then we would roll together, and that, like, you could see like the respect like for each other that was communicated just by the way we would roll and by the way we would interact and stuff like that,
Yeah.
you know. And it was like the coolest thing. I would love to hunt somewhere where it's just where the language is different, just like culturally different. You know, it would be cool.
Yeah, and it is, and it's an adventure, and it really makes you appreciate what we have here.
Mm.
Not to get philosophical, but I mean, you go into Mongolia or Kyrgyzstan and get out of those big cities into the countryside, and man, it is going back 3, 4, 500 years. I mean, there's still nomads in Mongolia, and it just makes you, I guess, on one side, appreciate what we have here, but on the other side, you look at how happy they are with no technology, and you're like, man, yeah, I could get a little used to this too. Not having all the social media and all that junk, but it's a great experience for sure.
Yeah, that lack of digital connectivity. It wasn't out of the country, but I went to Alaska on a hunt with my dad, and this has been some years ago. And it was the guy who was, so we went in, we flew into Ketchikan Island, and then we were going to Prince of Wales Island, and we flew in on a pontoon plane. And there was a fellow there, like the gas station was the post office, also was the grocery store, like,
Yeah.
and it was literally like the size of my living room, it
Yeah.
was like everything. And there was a fellow there that was, that we had rented just some houses off of, because it wasn't guided. It had to be semi-guided since we weren't from Alaska to go,
Right.
which basically meant the guy gave us an old Forester or an old forestry Suburban, and we rented a cabin from him. And he was like, if you want me to look at some maps with you, I'll look at some maps with you. And that was basically like, that was it. And then we were off on our own. And so he met us there at the dock where we came in, and he had a fellow that worked for him that kind of was helping us just like get our bags and stuff like that, and me being, from the country, growing up in the country, it's like I'm helping grab the bags off the plane, and he was a younger guy. He was probably in his mid-20s and maybe even his early 30s. And he just kind of stopped me. He's like, no. He's like, let me get those. I was like, nah, man, it's like not a problem. It's like, there's 5 of us, or there's a lot of bags. Like, I'll just give you a hand, get them out of there. And he's like, no. He's like, he's like, it's my job. Let me do it. And I was like, all right, cool. Got to talk to him a little bit. And he's just a real simple guy, right?
Sure.
He lived in his truck with his dog. He had a big cap on the back of his truck, like one of those camper caps. And that's where he lived. And I saw him like later that week parked up on the side of the mountain. And that was like over this overlook, and that's kind of where he lived. And I just remember thinking to myself, because I was a young man at that time, kind of trying to figure out my path, right, and what I wanted, and I wanted all these things, right, and it really kind of probably saw the right thing at the right time, because it made me realize, I was like, hey, here's this guy that truthfully doesn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of, right? Doesn't have much at all, right? And just from the interaction I had with him, he probably wasn't like equipped professionally to do much more than he was doing, like, put it that way, right? I was like, but he's carved out of life for himself, and he's making his way, and the dude is happier than a pig in shit. I was like, and here I am with everything at my fingertips, right? And am miserable, right? Or unhappy X% of the time, right? I was like, one of us has something figured out and the other one has a lot to learn, So
Yeah.
you can do the math there and figure out which one was which, right? And it's just so cool when you go places like that and you see that. It really kind of makes you appreciate what you have, and then also realize that you could probably do with a lot less.
Yeah, and it's a big world, right?
Mm-hmm.
You realize how big the world is and how real insignificant you personally are in it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean. I've been up in the McKenzie Mountains in Northwest Territory and just looking as far as you can see at mountains, and you realize I am literally nothing.
Yeah.
As great as I think I am nothing. I mean, this world is massive, and I am irrelevant.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of nuts.
That was the feeling that I got while I was there, and that was probably one of the coolest feelings. It was some people, I think the first kind of feeling is almost a little bit of fear, right? Like, cause the ego, it's like, I'm literally don't matter. Like, I could fall in a hole here. I could fall in a bog and disappear. Things are going to go on. Right.
Keep right on going.
And, but then like when you settle into it a little bit, there's a little bit of like, comfort that comes with it. right? Because then it becomes, well, the things that I'm putting so much pressure on myself to do X, Y, and Z really don't have,
Yeah,
like, don't matter, right? So then it comes back to like, well, what's important to me? Because that's really what should matter. It's like, well, it's my family, my friends, my
yep,
happiness, right? Like all those things, right? It just kind of snaps that stuff into perspective. Because at the
without
end
a
of the day, you
doubt.
ain't got much more than that,
Yep, that's without a doubt. Yep,
you
for
know.
sure.
You know, we are going to talk about deer hunting. Joe and I just got a little philosophical in everybody.
Yeah, we
You know.
did, buddy. I love it. I was gonna tell another story, and I was like, wait a minute, man.
Yeah, no, dude.
We're gonna get too many kumbaya
Yeah,
comments. We
dude.
need
Let's
to
do
move
another
on.
kumbaya one. I'm ready for it. Like, give me this story now that you said it. I got to hear it.
No, I was just going to say, I don't remember who told it, but there was a fisherman down in this village, and an investment banker went down there. And if you've heard this story, tell me to shut up.
Mhm.
But the investment banker saw what he was doing and saw that, he was like going out and fishing for a couple hours a day, coming in, playing guitar with his family. But it was and sitting around cooking fish, drinking a beer. And the investment banker was like, man, you're in the biggest fishing waters in the world. Let me fund you, and we can get 7 boats, and you can train these guys to fish, and y'all can fish all day, and grow the business and make a $2 million and then retire. And the guy's like, and then do what? And the guy was like, well, then once you got all that money, you can retire and be with your family. And he goes and fish for 2 hours a day and come back and play the guitar and drink beer. He's like, I'm already doing that,
I'm
brother.
already
Yeah,
doing it.
I ain't doing all that stuff.
Right. That's it, man. A little bit of perspective and recognizing where you're at sometimes.
Yeah, the guy's going out and fishing for 2 hours a day to put food on the table, and then he's coming out and hanging with his family and drinking beer with his buddies. I mean, that's one
Yeah,
way to look at it.
that's it, man. That's it, man. Yeah, it's a fine balance, right, between getting the things that you want, and sometimes you already have it. It's just a change of perspective of what it is that you want. I go through that all the time, right, where it's like, I'll sometimes consider a career change and stuff like that, and I'm like, well, why do I want to do that? Well, I want to spend more time with my family, right? And it's like, I want to spend more time in the outdoors and hunting and stuff like that. And then I'm like, man, you work from home, your family, when they're home, you're here, right? I'm like,
Yeah,
so it's not, and then I'm like, I get to travel to hunt as much as I really kind of want to, outside of like maybe, outside of like hunting for a living, per
right.
se, right?
Yep.
I run a podcast that I love doing, that I get to talk to my buddies regularly
Sure.
about hunting. Even if they don't live near me, I still get to hang out with them and chat.
Yep.
I'm like, maybe it's all right,
Stay the course, baby. The grass is not always greener.
That's right, man. That's
That's
right.
it.
Speaking of green grass, though, man, I'm going to do a really bad transition. We're going to talk a little bit about last year. Because last year, the grass was greener for me on the Kansas trip and in Pennsylvania, because I had a killer year last year. But
Yeah.
I mean, I know you and I were texting last year, so I kind of know how your season played out last year. But just, the Cliff Notes version of how did things pan out for you? I know Kansas went really well for you, but how did everything else go?
Man, it was a really, really good year. Shot a nice buck early here in South Carolina, velvet buck. I think the 18th. Our season comes in the 15th of August. So I got all my cameras out and already got some pictures of some decent deer here in South Carolina. They got some more growing to do. But South Carolina was good. From there to Kentucky and killed the first morning. I hunted afternoon, and the first morning got in ahead of a front early, kind of the late October time frame. I guess late October. And then Kansas was a little tricky. Did not have a real target buck there. Found a big deer while I was there, but the farm I was on or had access to hunt was not where we needed to be. It would have ended up being 100% luck if he had come where we were. So we moved to another farm that we could really get in a good rut funnel, and there was a big 9-point in there. Ended up killing him. And then did the Mexico, or I did Texas and Mexico, and man, those are normally pretty much slam dunk hunts. So yeah, it was a great year.
Nice, man. Where are you hunting in Mexico?
So right
Like the
over,
regionally.
yeah. If you fly into Laredo, Texas, and then go right over the border, it's only about 30 miles over the border. So it's that golden triangle right over the border in Laredo,
Okay.
Nuevo Laredo, right outside of Nuevo Laredo.
All right. Interesting. Because I keep getting like this fella keeps reaching out to me, asking me if I'd be interested in hunting. I forget what area it is. It's the area that's pretty cartel heavy. That's why I've avoided it. Like
Yeah,
it's a big national forest kind of area. I don't know if they call them national forest there, but it's a big like contiguous national forest type of area, and it has like killer mule deer in it, like giants, right? And
Yeah,
so I'm always
that'd be west of where
it
I am.
is, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it is west. Like how's hunting Mexico been for you? Like, do you ever have any concerns about
I
going there?
haven't, I haven't. And my first experience down there, I went with an American guy. They had like a
Okay.
booking agent. It was smart. The guy that owns this ranch is very wealthy businessman in Mexico, and he had a U.S. booking agent that everybody would book through and ask questions. And the guy's like, "Man, I'm down there back and forth across the border 50 times a season. That's what I run hunters back and forth and all that." So I went down and met Keith in Laredo, and we drove across together, hunted the first year, and I was like, "This is great. It's easy to get here, not a lot of pressure on these deer." And so the next year I went back, and I think I brought 10 guys with me, had
Mm,
two hunts, and then last year would have been the third year and did the same thing. Did a group of 6 and a group of 4, and
nice.
just it was great. Love it. It's like South Texas. It's very similar, but it's probably priced a little bit better. And you can South Texas, those bigger deer, they start pricing them. Everything in Texas seems to be the bigger it scores, whether it's free range, high fence, whatever. This is a completely free range, non high fence hunting place. But even those type places in Texas, the bigger the deer is, the more you've got to pay,
Mm,
and it becomes a money game, and it gets to where it prices you out of the market, man. Some of these big free range Boone and Crockett type deer, it just you got to pay a fortune to get on a buck like that, and
right.
I don't really like that, man. I want to just go hunt and do my thing.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's kind of where I'm at. Like I always kind of, enjoy a little bit of the surprise, if you will. You know what I mean? Um, that's what I like about headed out to the Midwest or like the Kansas, the plains. Like I like being able to watch and I can find like that's the one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's the one I'm going to go try to kill. And but this year I won't be headed there. I have you hunted like outside of Kansas, have you hunted other plain states? Like
Uh,
Oklahoma or
no,
Nebraska or
I've never hunted Oklahoma, Nebraska. I've hunted Montana, hunted
okay.
South Dakota, never Nebraska, never Oklahoma. I've hunted Colorado.
Okay.
Uh,
Eastern Colorado?
no, elk hunted.
Elk hunted
So,
it. Okay.
yeah, it was in the
Yeah.
Rockies.
Because I'm trying to start to dig into find some other plains areas just because Kansas is getting a lot of fanfare. You know what I mean?
And it's hard to get drawn. Heck, I didn't get drawn this year.
Yeah, I didn't even try this year because I had no points. And I was like, you know what? I was like, I got lucky. The past 2 years I drew with no points. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and just get my point. And I'm actually going to go to Missouri this year. But I started kind of poking around at some of the other states, like in and around there, that have that plains kind of hunting experience to see if maybe I start to jaunt off to some of those places, to kind of get my prairie fix, if you will.
Yeah, I've seen some big deer come out of South Dakota. I don't know all the rules there. It was years and years ago when I hunted there, but see some good deer coming out of South Dakota.
Right. So you got your cams out, dude. So how's the was it a little bit of a scorcher getting those out in there in South Carolina?
It is so freaking hot. It is. I saw somebody that had one of my buddies from here in South Carolina had a meme, and it had the sun, and then it had South Carolina, and then it had it had the globe of or the planet of the United States. Like South
Right.
Carolina is in between the two. It's terrible, man.
Yeah.
I was shooting my recurve right before we got on here, just out in the back of the shop. And within 10 minutes, I mean, I was sweating so bad I was having to get paper towels and dry off the bow handle. And I'm inside my shop.
Yeah.
It's not climate controlled, and shoot. I've got a big roll up door, and I rolled up the door and was shooting out there. It's brutal, but yeah,
Yeah.
got all the cameras out. My son came and helped me with the last 4 or 5, and got everything out and started getting some pictures of some decent deer. So there's a
Nice.
few in the swamp this year.
Nice, man. Yeah, it's dude, it was 96 today. I think it's supposed to be 100 here tomorrow. And
Oh,
then
yeah,
I
we're at
think
105 today. With I could be wrong, but I think it was 85% humidity.
goodness, man. Yeah, cuz I've been chomping at the bit to do some camera checking. I usually don't check until for me cuz my season, well it depends. So locally my season opens up like mid-September. I'll miss the opener cuz I'll be in Idaho. But then the statewide opener and like the North Piece that I hunt, that all opens up like the very beginning of October. And so usually I don't check any of my cameras. I try not to until like August, like 22nd, 23rd, 24th. I started kind of subscribing to the idea and talking with Chad, and he started watching this, and just, it's one of the things that we've kind of took from the Drurys, because they would always say like, hey, around this like late August timeframe, some deer that are probably planning to transition their core range or their fall range into like a new area. Like if you see just some roamers come through in August that you haven't seen the rest of the summer, those deer are probably deer that are going to end up in that general area, during the fall.
Yeah.
And so I went back and looked at a bunch of trail camera information I had from years past. And sure enough, I would go back through and be like, hey, here's this buck in the summer. And like, well, hey, here he is like October 16th. He's back. You know what I mean? It's like, and so it started kind of holding true, not 100% across the board, but enough to where I'm like, I don't even check them until then, because then it's like I have a good sense of like who was there in the summer. Some of them are going to disperse, some of them are going to stay, and then who made kind of an excursion during the summer and ended up in my area. That deer's probably one at some point mid to later October. He'll probably be back, if not before, right? So fingers crossed. I'm being patient this year. Is what I'll say.
See, we start August 15th. That's when our season opens. So I got to get one located in early season. I mean, it's just food. So that's I got everything on food right now, and just seeing what's what. But they're still not finished growing.
Yeah,
I posted one on my story this morning. That's actually
I saw that.
One of my son's spots, and for us, that's going to be a good buck. It's going to be a nice 8.
Nice.
And I showed my wife the picture last night, and I said, "This is one of Jack's. My son's name's Jack. This is one of his spots, but I'm not going to show him this deer because he doesn't have access to the trail cameras. You know how you can share them, and I hadn't shared them to him yet." She literally picked her phone up and called him. And I was completely joking with her. And she picked her phone up and called him and goes, "Jack, Dad's got a picture of a big deer. You need to get the picture. Apparently it's in one of your spots." So she ratted me out immediately. I know where her loyalty lies.
There you go. There you go. It sounds like that mother-son bond is strong in the house.
It is so bad. They say if you go over a cliff and your wife's got you by one hand and your son by the other, she would never even put one hand out for me. It'd be both on him, and she'd wink at me. Bye-bye. See you later.
Yeah. See, we got the opposite dynamic in this house. We got my daughter, right? And so she's 15, about to turn 16, and she's rounded the corner of being like crazy, as I like to say. And she's now kind of turned, not like a daddy's girl necessarily, but she, like, more so than in a long time, she wants to hang out with dad. Like, she's like, when we were on vacation, she wanted to go do stuff with me, and I ask her all the time when I do this, and she always says no. And I was like, hey, whatever night it was, I think it was Saturday night. I was like, hey, I'm going to go out and do some glass and driving. I haven't checked the crop rotation like yet this spring, or in the areas that I hunt. And there's no crops really adjacent to where I hunt locally. It's all maybe a half mile to a mile, maybe 2 miles away, but at least I get an idea of like if there are any good deer in the area that might transition, into like an area that I'm hunting for the fall. And I was like, hey, I'm going to go out and glass, probably take the dog. I was like, and I'm probably going to swing by like the ice cream place and get some ice cream on the way home if you want to go. And usually she's like, nah, I don't want to go. And this time she's like, yeah, I'll go along. And I was like, what? So we glassed some deer, saw a couple bucks, saw one actually really good buck. Nowhere close to where I can hunt though, so it wasn't like a big deal, but it was just cool. Like, man, it gets you fired up, man, because the season's almost here, right? Because my wife would be like, why do you want to go look at deer that you can't hunt? I'm like, I don't know. I like just to look at velvet bucks.
Because you might find one that makes you figure out a way to go hunting.
Right. It's the same reason why I look at nudie mags, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly right.
It's like,
that's my middle. OnlyFans is my middle name.
Oh man, that's awesome. But so we talked a little bit about travel hunting and stuff like that a little bit earlier, but you did have like an awesome kind of spring, summer, and all joking aside, I was kind of living vicariously through you because you had some killer hunts this spring and like into the early summer, and were able to put some killer critters on the ground, man. And like, and it's just, I don't know. I think, for guys who want to be able to hunt all year round, like it's such a good option, like to take some of those types of trips during the different times of the year, like to kind of spread out the hunting opportunities. And so just like, where all did you end up going, and what all like tags were you filling during that time of year?
Yeah. So I agree with you, man. most guys hang up the bow, as soon as whitetail season's over, and then maybe July they get going again. And I like to just kind of keep going, right,
Hmm.
as much as I possibly can. And whether that's simple hogs, where you can go and get on hogs, it's good to stay sharp that way. I started off with Axis. I really wanted to shoot an Axis buck in velvet, and the ranch that I have access to in Texas, they're kind of the velvet season because the Axis are weird. That drop horns at different times of the year, and
Hmm.
it's some will be in velvet, some will be hard horn. They're not like whitetail where they're all in a circle or
Hmm.
circle
Cyclical.
cyclical. That's the word right there. I
Yeah.
can say it but can't spell it. And so on this particular ranch, a lot of the deer are in velvet in April. So that's where
Mm.
I started. I went out there in April and shot a really good buck in velvet. Hang on, just
Yeah.
and so sorry, that was
No
cleaning.
worries.
My cleaning guy was coming in. I didn't realize he was coming today. So shot a big deer in a big Axis buck in Texas in velvet. That's where I started. And I've started shooting a new bow. I've been a Matthews guy forever and started shooting a prime just to try it out. And so that was one of the reasons I really doubled down on trying to
Mm.
do a bunch of hunts this off season. I like to get any new equipment and try and get as many arrows downrange on animals as I possibly can if I'm going to really seriously make a switch on something. Because I've shot Matthews for a long, long time and love Matthews. And I like the way this prime aims and I like the draw cycle of it. And so I shot all these animals with that bow and also with that mega meat. I don't know. Are you a mechanical guy, Clint? I can't remember.
Nah, I'm a
You,
fixed
you're,
blade guy,
you're a
but
fixed blade
yeah.
guy. Yeah. And so I've been hearing a bunch of things about the mega meat broadhead, and I tested it some we have a mold that we shoot a lot of broadheads into just to test them out. And I shot it into that mold and it made a huge hole, but the blades bent a little bit. So I wasn't, super excited about that. I was a little nervous about it and had a bunch of guys keep telling me, man, you've got to try this mega meat. You got to try this mega meat. So I went and shot that Axis deer with it and was blown away.
Hmm.
I mean, it was a fist size hole, entry, exit, no blades broke. The thing went 70 yards. It was a huge blood trail. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna take this thing over to Botswana and shoot a bunch of big plains game with it. Kudu, roan, wildebeest, gemsbuck, stuff way bigger than a whitetail. And so after the Texas Axis, we went to Botswana and shot a bunch of that stuff over there, coming into water holes anywhere from 30 to 15-yard shots, typical whitetail range. And the broadhead just performed over and over and over
Hmm.
again. I could not believe how well it performed and how good the bow shot.
Hmm.
Very, very impressed with the bow. And I know this isn't a products, podcast that we're doing here, but I'm just saying that was a lot of the driving force behind these off-season trips was to go and try a lot of this stuff out. And so then came back, and my buddy that went on that first Axis deer hunt, he didn't get a buck, so he really wanted to go back during the rut. And so I went back with him, and we both got Axis on the last hunt. So
Nice.
we wrapped that up.
Nice. How are Axis deer? Do you hunt them any differently than you would a whitetail? Like, do they act similarly? Like, are the behaviors somewhat the same or?
So I would say they're more like an elk. They actually they call it an Axis roar. It's a very unique sound. It's almost like a screech. And they'll have a herd, that they're with. They'll obviously be on the hot doe, but
Mhm.
they herd kind of like an elk,
Hmm.
like a miniature elk, and they're beautiful. They're gorgeous animals. They get 30+ inch long horns, and the meat is out of this world. And my wife loves venison of all kinds, and so do I. So we keep the freezer full with Axis deer. Just love it. It's
Right.
delicious, delicious meat.
Nice. Yeah, the dude, when you were in Botswana, I sent you a text of all the poisonous snakes that were in the area that you live.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm like, hell no. Or not the area that you live, but the area that you were hunting. Like all those snakes are indigenous to that area. And literally your response back to me was one of those snakes you took a video of and sent it to me.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm like,
We had, this is crazy. I shot a Gims buck, and we went and tracked it, and then we went back to get all of our stuff out of the blind, and this thing was 5 feet from our blind, and he was just slithering on by, and I had a camera guy with me and had a GoPro, and he put it on one of those long sticks. He was going to try to get the puff adder to strike the GoPro, and it would not strike it. It
hmm.
curled up, and he kept putting it right in his face, and it just would not strike it. Now I know if I had walked within a foot of it, it would have hit me for darn sure. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, there are, and that's part of it. That's part of that environment, and I don't like them one bit, but you just have to deal with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And you've hunted that area like pretty frequently, like in your life, right? Like that's
Oh
like
yeah, yeah. I
that's
actually
an area
worked.
you're familiar with.
Yeah, not Botswana, but the southern part of Africa. When I was licensed over there, I did Mozambique, Tanzania, Zambia, Zimbabwe. I hunted a lot of those areas, and we saw quite a few mambas, Mozambique, spitting cobras. I mean, there are a lot of snakes, and I never will forget, man. One of my first apprenticeship years, we were following this. He was really a poacher, but he was the most unbelievable elephant tracker. He could track those things like nobody's business. It's like he knew, they have their footprint is like a thumbprint.
Hmm.
Each one has very unique characteristics, and he could tell by the track which bull it was in that area. And we're talking areas that are the size of the state of South Carolina, and he would
Right.
know which elephant it was. And the head PH would call BS on him and say, you're full of it. And he goes, okay, let's follow it up. And sure enough, he'd say, this is the bull that only has one tusk. And we'd follow up the trail, and sure enough, it'd be that when we finally got to that bull, it would be the one with one tusk. But the point being, back to the snakes, the head tracker always carries the shooting sticks. The sticks they set up. It's like a tripod that you get
Hmm.
level on, and we're just walking through the bush through this tall grass, and all of a sudden I see him swat like that, and he never broke stride. And when I got up to where he had just slapped a cobra, a Mozambique spitting cobra, had stood up out of that tall grass right beside him. He just smacked it with his shooting sticks and kept right on walking. And I was like, are we not gonna address this at all? We're not we're not gonna debrief on what just happened. Everybody just kept right on walking. I mean, one of
Uh,
the most venomous snakes in the world, and he just slaps it with the shooting sticks and keeps right on going.
yeah, no, I'd been
At home,
like,
if we see a black snake, I'm unloading the shotgun
yeah,
into the dirt trying to run this thing off.
that's
It was
it,
pretty
man.
pretty wild.
No, I would have set the whole place on fire, got on a plane, and left. That would have been it.
Yeah,
Like
that's right. Yep.
the so man, how long did you? Because you guided down there, right?
I did 7 years. I didn't guide for 7 years. I really only guided for 2.5 seasons.
Hmm.
I did a 5 year apprenticeship because I
Hmm.
couldn't stay the whole season. Normally it's a 2 year apprenticeship. And I ended up settling in Mozambique because I loved that area. It was so wild. We were in northern Mozambique, right on the Tanzania border. And it was just beautiful how Africa was 500 years ago. And,
Hmm.
you've got elephant in there, you got lion, buffalo, leopard, all the plains game. It was an
Hmm.
incredible area. But yeah, that was before we had Jack. My wife and I had my son, and then, priority shift. And
Hmm.
that had been my plan really since I was super young, was to guide in Africa for 6 months out of the year and sell safaris the other 6 months back in the
Hmm.
U.S. And I got to do that for a few years, and
Hmm.
priorities shifted, and now I've got the bug to get back over there, not to guide anymore, just to hunt, just to
Right.
hunt.
Do you ever miss that wildness that
Oh
I've
man,
never been, so I don't have any context. I've had some buddies like yourself and a couple other buddies that have gone to Africa to hunt, and every one of them are like they all started off like me, which was like, man, I don't know, I don't have any like relationship with those animals, and I don't feel like a connection. And I was like, and that's why I like hunting whitetail, and that's why I still even choose whitetail over elk, because I have that, I grew up around them. And they were the same way. And so they're always like, they'll invite me to go, hey, you should come to Africa with me, like do a hunt. And I'm always like, nah, man, I don't know. And they were the same way. But once they went, it changed their world, where they were like, I can't imagine not going now and doing that hunt, as frequently as I can possibly get over there to do it.
Yeah, it's a completely different world, and it's a completely different style of hunting. But it's done in our quote unquote off season, right? June,
Hmm.
July, August is the peak to be over there, and you can do both. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm addicted to whitetail hunting, whitetail bow hunting. I mean, it's my absolute passion. But I love the Africa too, and it doesn't conflict with it at all.
Hmm.
So that's what's so neat about it is that
Nice.
you can do that and do this.
Right.
You can do both. So it's
Yeah.
yeah, man, it gets in your blood bad
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's so different because you get up in the morning, warm up around a campfire, hop in the Land Cruiser. You got no idea. You might see an elephant, you might see a lion, you might see a sable, you might see a kudu. It's just you can run into something completely different at any time, and it's constantly changing. And
Right.
it's a lot of targets. It's a lot of animals to hunt, and it's a lot of fun.
Nice. Yeah, if I go, I might have to take you with me, the Cobra Slapper. Since you got experience, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we'll bring him in. I think he actually died, but
No, did he?
yeah, he
Damn.
we'll get
Cobra?
another. No, the Cobra definitely died. I'm sure. Tracker, I think he passed away.
Yeah, that's too bad. Well, shoot, man. Well, it's strange. I wanted to talk to you about your trips and stuff like that because I knew you were testing a bunch of gear, and I didn't realize that like part of like I mean I know you just like to hunt in general, so I knew like you'd be hunting like all through the spring and summer and stuff like that, but I didn't realize it was like a lot of the testing of the gear and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's a great
I
idea
just
because I
have a
mean,
hard time. I mean, like you, I have a hard time changing from something that's worked for me.
mm,
I want to improve as much as I can. I try to keep the most open mind as possible. I think that's how you learn and get better at
mhm,
what we like to do. But it's hard for me. I've got a system that really works to change,
mhm,
and when you're making drastic changes like changing a broadhead, changing a bow, those type things. It's not like changing a deer stand. Those are changes, but man, you change a broadhead and it fails on you, and you've worked that hard for that one deer. Woo! Or you change a bow and you get in the heat of the moment, and you torque that thing a little bit. That can really screw up everything.
mhm,
So
yeah,
to make that transition from something that's really been working for me for years and years, I had to prove it to myself.
yeah.
And
That
go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
no, I was just gonna say that totally makes sense because I struggled with for years, for several years, struggled with getting my arrow to fly. Like once I put a broadhead on it, I tried a bunch of different broadheads. Some of them I couldn't get the tune. Like it was just I played hell for a couple years, and last year I made the switch to the broadhead setup that I was using, and it was the first time that I had ever. And this was the same I was using. Last year was the second year with that bow. So one was a bow issue, and I changed the bow and whatever. But last year was the first time that when I had my setup dialed, like everything shot spot on. Like every time I picked it up, it was the same every single time. And then I killed that deer in PA, put that broadhead through both shoulders. I sharpened that broadhead, took it to Kansas. I put that same broadhead through two shoulders in a Kansas whitetail. Right. So after that, I was like, I'm not changing anything. I was like,
So think about that. Your
yeah,
system is 100% down. What is it going to take
oh,
to make you change from that?
I don't. You know what it'll take is changing from compound to a traditional bow.
Yeah.
That's literally the only thing because I'm looking at some different broadheads now because the broadheads I'm shooting for my compound I'm not going to shoot for my longbow. I'm gonna change. Not change, but I'm going to use something more specific for my traditional equipment.
Yeah.
But that would be it. Like, I don't know that anything would make me, I don't know that you could get me to change my setup right now for anything. Like, I
But
work
if I came to you and said, I'm telling you, this is going to change things. If I
yeah,
said that over and over and over again, and you said, all right, I've got my setup right here, and I'm going to lay it on the shelf, and I'm going to try this new system. And you go out and shoot in the backyard, and yeah, it's flying good, but you don't know until you put some bodies on the ground that it's going to actually work. And I was pleasantly surprised
yeah.
with the results.
Yeah, it would take a buddy like that I trust, like you or Chad or someone who I know, like whenever they speak on I'm using something and they're like, yeah, this thing works. Like there's a handful of people that I'm like, yeah, that I would trust that person and go, you
Yeah,
know what, it's worth me. But it's the same thing as you. It's like I would want to I would want to put some seat time in with it, and
without a
get
doubt.
some reps. It's the same thing with me making the switch to a longbow. Like, people ask me, it's like, is the longbow like it this year? I'm like, well, I'm going to do the elk hunt with a compound because I'm not trusting myself on my first hunt with a longbow, trying to kill an elk in Idaho. You know what I mean? In the
Yeah,
mountains of Idaho, like not going to happen. But I was like, what I am going to do is take the early part of the season and see if I can't lay down a couple does with it and feel like my setup works, right? And that I work more importantly, with the
yeah,
equipment. I was like, and if I can prove to myself with that, I was like, then it'll go on like the other whitetail hunts with me. I was like, but if I don't get any does under my belt with that early, I was like, I'm like when I'm going out and I know I'm in an area that I'm going to be hunting a specific deer or I'm hunting a particular buck or whatever. I was like, I'm probably going to take the compound with me. Until I can trust myself with it and I can trust that equipment.
yeah. It's a whole new world, man. I have piddled around with the recurve off and on,
I was going to ask you
and
about that.
yeah. Here's how my sales got completely deflated. I was in, as you well know, I mean, I was shooting in our warehouse back here. I was shooting, I was getting a good group. I felt like my form was good. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go. Bobby Worthington and I put together a couple seminars that we did out at his home farm, or it's the one he lives on.
Mhm.
Another guy owns it. He manages it, and it's huge. It's like 3,500 acres in the mountains of Tennessee. And we did some seminars out there. And he's a 8-time world traditional champion, traditional bow champion, recurve champion, and he does lessons. So I said, I'm going to take all my stuff out here and let Bobby look at me, make some suggestions, and get everything dialed. And then next year, I'm going to dive in 100%, and I'm just going to do recurve. That's my plan. So this was in February,
Mhm.
and I'd been shooting for probably since November. And I get out there, he gives me my lessons. He's got, Joe, you got a pretty good release. You're looking pretty good. I think you could hunt with it, coming up this season. And I said, well, Bobby, what's your deal? And he goes, oh, I don't hunt with my recurve. I'm like, what do you mean you don't hunt with your recurve? He said, well, I'm an 8-time, not national, but world champion, and I'm not a good enough shot to hunt with my recurve. And I just was like, what
Wah,
an ass.
wah.
What an ass. Why would you do, I mean, what do you mean?
Right.
He's got such a good personality,
Yeah.
and he just said, yeah, I don't hunt. I have hunted and I've killed deer with it, but I'm just not a good enough shot. So I hunt with my compound. And so I didn't burn it, it
Right.
let all the wind out of my sails. I hung it up, started shooting my compound again. And then I don't know what it was about a month ago. I'm like, you know what? The heck with Bobby. I'm not listening to him. I'm gonna start shooting this thing. I'm gonna prove him wrong. I'm gonna
Right.
kill a good deer with that thing this year. And whether I do or don't, I don't know. But I'm gonna play with it some, especially in the swamp here, because it's so close to my house. I mean, I can be in a stand in 10 minutes. We can shoot 5 bucks here. We can shoot like 10 does. So I will get some time. And it's not like there is one really nice buck in the swamp, and I haven't found him yet. I don't know if he's still alive. And I would probably hunt him still with my compound. But most of the other ones, I would love to try and get some cracks at them with traditional and see how that goes.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's funny, dude. That's hilarious. That was the thing that knocked the wind out of your sails. It was mine was well, wind hasn't been knocked out of my sails. I still feel like I'm going to use it this year. Um, again, just kind of how I described previously. My test ultimately was like I'm shooting every day, right? Getting arrows in every day. Now the challenge is I'm trying to get some compound arrows in too to get ready for Idaho. The crazy thing is I don't know if this happened to you or not, but I shot basically nothing but my longbow from February up until consistently. Like I picked up my compound like once or twice like over the course of the winter into the spring, but really didn't start shooting it at all until probably like 3 weeks ago, and even still it's like I gave myself to the July 4th time frame. I was like, go on vacation, come back. And then like after that, I was like, then it's like time to get ready for Idaho, like start doing some rucking, start shooting my compound more consistently and stuff like that. Man, I pick up my compound after shooting my longbow for so long, and I'm just like dropping dimes. And like
Unbelievable.
it's like my focus is so much better. It's not like I became a better archer. I'm the same quality of archer that I was or wasn't previously, is how I kind of describe it. It's just now my focus with every single arrow is so much more dialed in and so much more full of intent than it was previously, because I realize now how lazy I was getting with things because I'm shooting a compound and it can compensate for me being not 100% dialed in. And my longbow, it's like, man, I got to be like focusing, looking at the spot, like burning a hole through the spot I want to hit, because I shoot instinctive. And that focus is all translated over to the compound. And I'm so much a better shot than I was a year ago.
It's so funny you say that this morning. I've been shooting my compound a lot, and she brought the recurve out this morning, and I was shooting at a dot, just like a little penny sized dot at 20 yards, and I shot like a 6-inch group with my recurve, and I was like, it's not bad, not, for having not shot in quite a while. And I pulled my arrows out, and I said, all right, before I hit the weights, I'm gonna shoot my compound just 3 arrows at that same 20-yard target. I broke a knock and shot a fletching off another arrow, and I was like, it's just. It's like, what is going on here? A 6-inch group to 3 stacked right on top of each other, and I was just like, this compound stuff. I mean, I wish I could just bite the bullet and just dive all the way in, and that's probably what I need to do. But dadgum, I mean, an 8-time world champion tells you he's not a good enough shot to hunt with it. That'll. But then you look and you're like, Cody DeQuisto, I think that's what sparked me. We had a conference call the other day about the mobile road show.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting everything dialed in for that. And he's like, how's that Bushman bow? Because the guy that builds his bow built this one for me. And I said, Cody, I hadn't been shooting that thing much. He's like, oh man, come on, you got to shoot that thing. And he was telling me all about his, and he was getting me fired up. He was like, this close quarters hunting, this, you get these whitetail in where you're seeing the whites of the eyes and shooting them. He's like, man, you got to start shooting that thing again. And I was like, yeah, I know, I need to. So
yeah. So it was him and Jared Scheffler from Whitetail Adrenaline that got me kind of sold on it, And it's funny because Cody's coming on like in a couple of days. He and I are chatting, and
you'll have to tell him that I got the old Bushman back out and started shooting it.
Yeah. And it's funny because Steve's going to build eventually when I get my custom bow, like he's going to build mine too. And it's going to be probably pretty similar to what Cody has, because I want something that's pretty small, compact, et cetera, et cetera. But those two are the two that kind of pushed me over the edge. And my test was going on vacation, not shooting for a week after shooting pretty much every day, and then coming back and being like, if I just picked up one arrow and let it rip at like 15, 16 yards, am I killing a deer? And so I came back, picked it up, and I laid it in there. You know what I mean? And I was like, all right, cool. I was like, then it's like, this thing's for real. I was like, it's gonna make it to the woods with me this year.
Have you tried it elevated yet? Have you gotten up and like and does that change things a lot, or?
I don't know. It was funny. It was weird. I actually shot it out of my saddle in my backyard, like after I had spent a little bit of time with it. And oddly enough, I don't know why, I shot it better than I did off the ground. And I was shooting further distances because and this was probably 2 months ago, maybe, I think is when I first did it. I was shooting, because typically in my backyard, I'll shoot, I'll usually start off at like 14, 15 yards. It's usually where I'll start. And then I'll step back to like 18. And that's kind of like my sweet spot, is at like 15 to 18 yards is like usually where I feel really good. And then when I step back to like 2021, and it's funny because people are listening probably like thinking like those are really small yardage increments, but it's like, man, with a longbow, that makes a huge difference. Like that 3 yards is a big difference, especially at those distances. Cause like shooting a longbow, I don't have as much energy as a recurve even. So I'm not shooting very flat, Yeah. And like my max is probably like getting back to like 25, 26. And then that's really like my point on like yardage essentially. And so after I was doing that for like a little while and I got back to that distance, I was like, you know what, it's time to get elevated and see how I do with that, because that's going to be the real test. You know what I mean? So I wasn't like 15 feet up. I was a couple feet off the ground, and I put the target where it's like in a spot in the yard where it would give me a little bit more angle, you know?
Yeah.
And I started off like at 10 yards. I was like, let me just see how I do. Like, you know, don't want to miss the target completely, and laid two in on top of each other, you know, and I was like, all right, cool. So then I moved it back to like 15, shot a couple arrows. And I was like, all right, groups are a little bigger. I was like, but I'm killing a deer because it was a smaller, just movable target that I had. Then I moved it back to 20. I was like, let's see what I could do at 20. And I was laying them in, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, every now and then I'd get one that was a little bit high, maybe like 3 inches high, you know, want to get that dialed in. But I don't know for me personally if I would take a shot any further than like 15, 16-ish yards, like with my longbow at this point,
Yeah.
you know? And I was like, damn. I was like, I actually shoot better from the saddle than I do,
That's good.
you know. And I
Yeah.
don't know if it's because it's so accommodating already, because when you cant the bow, you already kind of naturally want to do it the way you're sitting. It almost feels unnatural when you're using a compound to try to keep everything so upright, where it's like it almost feels more natural to let the bow kind of lay over, you know, when I'm shooting the longbow out of the saddle.
Yeah, I got to try it. I've got a little tower back here that I can get up in, but I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet.
Oh, you're there. Come on now.
No, I got a long way to go. Long way.
Nice. Well, speaking of shooting, man, like I know. So you and I got to catch up a little bit in Harrisburg, because you know you were there with Osseo at the Harrisburg show, and you were headed, I want to say like Virginia or something like that, to shoot with some like, you know, SF guys or former
Yeah.
SF guys and stuff like that. And so I'm just curious, man, like when you go do stuff like that, like what are you looking to get out of it, you know, from like a hunting perspective? And I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of things. It's just like their mindset, their mode of operation, their standard, their you know, they've got SOPs for everything. It's probably just kind of interesting, like not just for hunting, but from like a business perspective too, to see kind of how their minds operate.
It's funny you say that. Is the point is you get really good tactical training there, and I didn't have any of that really before I started or before I befriended these guys.
Mhm.
And the main point for me was to get the mindset, because
Mhm.
I feel like these are former SEAL Team 6 guys that were elite special mission units, direct. I mean, one of them was on one of the, he was young, but he was on the Bin Laden raid. He
Mm.
wasn't in the compound. He was a backup force for the Bin Laden raid. And these guys are the very tip of the spear. And I feel like, you know, in their world, they are Tom Brady-ish. They are the
Mhm.
best at what they do. And just like you, and I'll have the name wrong here, but if you could go and sit down with Horst Gracie,
Hodger Gracie. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, okay, I told you, oh, great, yeah. So,
Okay.
but if you could go sit down with him and see his mindset and how he carried himself throughout the day, and what he did, and just how he operates on a daily basis, you can pick up from that, and it'll transition into everything that you do.
Mhm.
And so that's really the tactical training is awesome. I feel like, yes, I can defend myself, I can defend my family better, but the mindset of how lazy I really was
Mm.
with how they operate from the time they wake up to the time they go to bed, everything's purpose and everything's attention to detail, like
Mhm.
super attention to detail. And when I catch myself getting out of that, whether it's diet, whether it's professional, whether it's family, whatever it is, when I catch myself, you know, getting out of that, my wife is always like, "What would DJ do?" You know, DJ Shipley, you guys,
Mhm.
y'all can look him up. It's a company called GBRS, Global Battlefield Research Solutions, is their company, and one of the owners is a guy named DJ Shipley, and he was a big time SEAL Team 6 guy. But anyway, just his mindset from a physical fitness, mental, just everything is purpose driven, and the attention to detail is never overlooked. With if it's brushing your teeth or grilling a steak, or it's almost exhausting to live completely like that. And
Mhm.
that's just kind of the area that they grew up in, and how they have been wired, that it doesn't matter. And that's why their business, their transition from the military world, they were medically retired from the military world into the business world and how fast they scaled their business
Mm-hmm.
because they do everything the right way all the time, every day, and the discipline is insane. And I feel like when you can be around people like that, it's going to rub off on you and help you. The best deer season I've ever had was the year after I met those guys.
Yeah. It's funny because I think people think they have discipline and rigor until they meet people who really have discipline and rigor. You know,
Yep,
you
without a doubt.
because like I feel like I'm a pretty disciplined guy. You know, get up in the morning, cold plunge, take all my vitamins, my supplements. I eat the same thing every morning. You know, I work out the same days usually. You know, sometimes you got to get it in where it fits in just based on life and stuff like that, right? But you don't overlook it, right? But even with that, it's like I know when I'm being lazy. You know what I mean? It's the ability to call yourself out and go, well, you know what? You're not doing it the right way right now. Like, start it over,
Yeah.
make it happen,
Yep.
and there's guys' ability to just kind of like recognize that and like go, yep, or they got they got a buddy. It's like that checks him. It's like, hey man, what's up? Like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
you missed X, Y, and Z,
Right.
It's even the little things, man. Like, especially when you're on a travel hunt, like I think like that's where that stuff, like for a hunter, right? Cause I always say, people get tired of hearing people talk about hunting fitness and stuff like that. And I always tell people, it's like, look, you don't have to be an Olympic athlete to be a good whitetail hunter or even a good elk hunter, but there are certain things that you gain from doing that type of stuff that isn't just the physical part of it that translates into you being better at stuff. And it's not just the physical stuff. It's the willingness to just make the hard decision every day to be consistent in working out, whatever it is, whether it's walking, running, lifting, whatever it happens to be, right? It's that accountability is the idea, right?
Yeah.
And that's the part that translates into whitetail hunting. It's like when you're out on a hunt, you're in, like me, for example, in Kansas, like the first year or the Iowa hunt that I was on, where it's like I got my teeth kicked in and just kept doing it day after day after day after day. And day 16 finally killed the deer. You know what I mean? And it was that accountability of like, I wanted to stop so many times, but it was that accountability of like, nope, just got to keep doing it. Chop wood, carry water, keep going, and that's the part that pays dividends to me in whitetail hunting. Cause when you're out on those trips, man, you get a couple days into the hunt, it becomes real easy to convince yourself to start to cut corners.
Oh,
And that's usually
without a
whenever
doubt.
the opportunity gets screwed up.
Yep. Yeah, just like shooting your bow. When you're on that hunt and you're hunting, do you shoot your bow a lot? When if it's rut and it's all day sits, well, the professional mindset is when you get back at night, you cut the headlights on in the car, you put the target out at 20 yards, and you zip 4 or 5 arrows just to make sure everything's still dialed. That's a corner that's easily cut. Oh, the bow's fine. Oh, the bow's fine. Just one example. But there's that one camera that is not in a very good spot, and the batteries have died in it. If you're running cameras, no, you go and you change those batteries. You pull that SD card because lo and behold, that he will have walked, up that funnel or whatever it is.
100%.
Without a doubt. So
Yeah.
those are the things, and one of their big sayings is be a pro. If you be a pro, whatever it is you're doing, whatever it is you want to be good at, take a professional mindset, and everything you do with that is be a pro. Whether it's jujitsu or building clothing or shooting your bow or shooting your recurve, whatever it is, be a pro. And so those are little things that'll stick with you. And so it's been an absolute blessing to get to be friends with those guys and get to go see them once or twice a year and just reassess myself.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I'm curious, man, what holes did you see in your game? What was illuminated for you?
Well, one thing that I really knew was diet was something that I struggle with and don't have discipline there, and just really the overall discipline of you nailed it on the head earlier. I thought I had good discipline. 5 a.m., 5:30 every morning, up out of bed, coffee, gym, work, but then halfway through the workday, maybe I'm flipping on Instagram for 20 or 30 minutes when I should be being productive. And look, we got to live. We're not robots, right? So you have to live. But if I really want to get good at my recurve, then I should have put the Instagram down and gone back to the shop and shot 7 or 8 arrows if I had time off between. So how bad do you really want it? Do you really want to be good at it?
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the main thing is, okay, I don't, the argument I have with myself, okay, after dinner, do I really want to go on that 20-minute walk? Do I want to go out and let everything settle? And, they talk about the sleep rhythm and doing those walks after dinner and all that. It's 105 freaking degrees in South Carolina. I can, get in the bed right now, or I can go walk and I'm gonna have to shower again and all that. So it just, I mean, I'm not beating a dead horse here, but just taking that discipline to another
Yeah.
level.
Yeah. That's just it, man. Like we were talking before we got on here, and then, this evening I'm going to, eat dinner at some point when we're done here. And then I'm going to throw on my hunting boots, my hikers that I'll wear in Idaho. I'm going to throw in my pack with probably 40 pounds of, landscaping rock in the back of it. And I'm going to go for a walk with my wife. I'm going to get all sweaty. I have to come home and get another shower,
Yeah.
but it's because, I need to get ready, and it's what I need to do to feel like I'm prepared. I think the other thing is too, when people think of discipline, they often think of like how hard you can go, right? And if you pay attention to like people who are high performers, they also have a real good self-awareness of like when they need to stop, right? Like when you listen to like, whether it's athletes or whatever it is, like that recovery aspect of it, especially like that's one thing I learned from like doing the training stuff that I do. Like I started, cause I like to do it a lot. I started falling apart physically. Like my body just started falling apart, right? Cause I'm 46 and, getting beat up 4 days a week, just like things are going to start to not work, and that was whenever I had to kind of stop and go, what am I doing wrong? Like, cause I feel like I'm just not getting the gains I should be getting because my body just won't allow it. Right. And that's when I had to kind of stop and go, if I want to exert the way I'm exerting consistently. Right. And so that goes for like, whether you want to hunt a ton of consecutive days or shoot your bow, a ton of consecutive, whatever it happens to be. If I want my output to be this consistently, then I need to figure out how to recover. And like when it's time to recover, to actually recover and know that like, that's actually part of the discipline is getting in the cold tub, doing my stretching, doing like the physical therapy things that the guy has me doing for my shoulders, so my shoulders will last and I can shoot my bow. Like it's those things that help you in that longevity piece of it, right? And that's the other part. Like, did you sense any of that from them? Like, because you mentioned sleep, and it seems like those guys know like their body rhythm, and it's like, yep, it's time to shut her down.
Yep. No, they do all that, and they've got one of the probably one of the best fitness trainers in North America. I think a guy named Vernon Griffin is their main trainer. He's in there every day with them in the morning. They do fitness every day at 7 a.m. and Vernon is there. And Vernon is next level trainer, and he works them through all that stuff, and helps them with their. And, they've all had 50 surgeries, shoulders,
for sure.
Arms, knees, everything's blown out. And anybody that wants to listen to a really good podcast, go to the Other Than Truth from the Stand.
And other than Mission Whitetail, put that
there
in
we go. Go to the Sean Ryan podcast and type in the DJ Shipley. It's a 4-hour podcast, but if you got a long road trip or something like that, DJ Shipley on the Sean Ryan podcast. And there's a video version, and then obviously you can listen to it on normal podcasts too. But he talks about a mission they did in Somalia that is next level crazy. So it's nice. They're the best at what they do, and so I feel like, again, anytime you can be around people like that, it can only make you better.
Yeah, 100%. So how do you take that mindset stuff that you've learned like with those guys, and how does that transition or roll into this year's whitetail season?
Yeah, that's 100% it. It's just trying to do everything. Like my son I was driving him crazy because the angle and height of some of the cameras we put out, I wasn't happy with. I was like, nope, we got to move it this way. Nope, we got to move it that way. Nope, we need to put a log behind it. Nope, it's standing out too much. And just obsessing over this is such a worn out phrase, obsessing over the details, but
Mhm.
just paying attention to the details and making sure things are done right the way they're supposed to be done, and paying attention to the small stuff.
Yeah.
And so that will go into everything that we do this hunting season.
Yeah.
Like Thursday, I've got a down day, and I'm going to do a suicide mission to Ohio. I'm going to leave at like 3:30 in the morning, drive all the way up there, get the 5 cameras out for the year. I won't even be back there till I may not even hunt there. It's a small farm, but setting the cameras up in a couple funnels, and then I'll drive back that afternoon. It's about an 8 hour drive up, 8 hour drive back, and then probably 4 hours of work there. So that'll be a 20-hour day. And just things like that, because I
Mhm.
have that opportunity to do it that day. And so just we'll do things the way they're supposed to be done, how they're supposed to be done, and when they're supposed to be done. And I need to have those cameras out. So that's just mindset, learned from them, and just those type things I will continue to do throughout the year.
Right. And it sounds like to me too, it's quality over quantity for you. Like, I don't know how many trail cameras you run, but like I get the sense that you're more of the right spots, cameras in the right spots, and not necessarily just a lot of cameras, right? Is that,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
without a doubt. And a lot of that, a new farm, you know, it's it's kind of a question of what type property it is, right?
Hmm.
Like the property I have in Kentucky, I'll have 2 cameras on that entire property because there is one spot that is an absolute rut funnel that Bobby and I set up together, and that's all I need on that whole property.
Hmm.
And as soon as and you can even blind hunt it. You don't even need a camera in there. If there's a big deer in the area during the rut, eventually he's going to come through there. He has to. If he wants to get from one spot to another, he has to come through there. So one camera in there, and when mature deer start moving through that funnel, I know it's time to be there. Transition over to like where I'm hunting here in South Carolina, early season. I've got more cameras set up on food. It's a 3,500 acres that I have access to, and it's big flat woods. There are no real funnels in there, but there's different food spots. There'll be muscadines, there'll be some beans, there'll be a food plot. There's some mineral sites, stuff like that I can set multiple cameras up on to try to figure out where these deer are feeding. And then I make okay, I got a good buck. They are normally doing the same thing over and over and over again until they get bumped this time of year, so early in the year that I'll focus more on that. Now, of course, I'll have a couple backup plans, plan B, C, D. But once I get that big deer located in the swamp here, and I'm planning on killing him going to food, then that'll be a concentration thing. So back to the point, I think it depends on what type property you have as to how many cameras you may be running.
Right. Right. No, that makes sense, especially, when you think about that farm in Kentucky. It's like if there's a spot, like, and it's the spot,
It is the
like,
spot.
what more do you need? What more do you need to know? So South Carolina, Kentucky, and Ohio, possibly this year. Any other states you're planning to
Yeah, I'll
hit
do
this
I'll
year?
do Texas and Mexico again, and then I actually bought a very small farm in Kansas that
Hmm.
I'll be able to get a. Well, I hope I'm going to be able to get a landowner tag. It's 50 acres, and I got to figure out how to get another 30. You've got to own 80 acres in the same unit in
Hmm.
order to get a tag in there, and I got a really good deal on a pretty good 50-acre tract, and I've got to get
Nice.
30 to go with it. So maybe Kansas.
Hmm.
I'm hoping that works out. And so, in Alberta, I'm going to Alberta early, August
Nice.
25th. I'm going to go up there. New guy. He was a sheep guide and got a young family now, so he's not going to be able to be gone for the sheep season like he was. And he kind of lives on that fringe area between the ag and the big bush country.
Hmm.
And he sent me some pictures of some deer, so I'm established a relationship with him. I'm going to go up, and you know that early season stuff, I don't force it. I'll get up there, and if there's a big one coming to alfalfa or to the canola fields, then I'll hunt him. If not, I really just want to learn the area and see, and maybe I've got some stuff that I can tell him that
Hmm.
we can try in the future, and that'll be kind of my plan for up there is to go and just kind of see the area. I plan on hunting, but there's giant bucks in Alberta,
Yeah.
and we'll just kind of see what's going on there. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's what I got cooking this year.
Nice, man. Yeah, I would love to get to Canada at some point and do a hunt, like for big whitetails. And what I've kind of heard too is that early season is kind of like the prime time to be there.
So Alberta, it is. It's hard to find guys that are serious about it that early because most of them have different things that they do. Like they'll be farming then, and that's a huge farming time. Like they're getting
Right.
crops out, they're getting everything prepared for the winter. So they're not super serious about it early season. It's big, vast country, and you got to spend a lot of time in the evenings glassing to find those little bachelor herds.
Hmm.
And when the rut rolls around, when you get into November 1st, that's when their rifle season starts. So it's really hard to get into some decent bow hunting then, and it's brutally cold. That's another thing. And I have hunted up there. I haven't had any luck rut hunting up there. I've hunted up there like the last of October, like the
Hmm.
25th to the 1st, to get out of there before the rifle season starts. Now you can bow hunt during rifle season, just a different animal.
Right.
Um, and it's giant deer up there though. I keep going back, and I have killed a really big 8 point up there years ago. And
Was that
I've,
in
I've
Alberta or
it
different?
was in
Was
Alberta.
it?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was a 160-inch 8 point that probably weighed about 320 pounds. He was so fat. He was coming to alfalfa every afternoon. He had cellulite in his hips. He was so fat.
Jeez.
It's
Dang.
nuts. Shot him in
That's
velvet.
crazy.
It was pretty neat.
That's wild, man. The a buddy of mine went to Manitoba and shot a really good buck. This was years ago. This is probably in the 90s. Yeah, I think he said like mid to late 90s. He went and shot just a hammer chocolate rack buck.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I've always wanted to go to Canada to hunt just because I want to see that big. Because coming from Pennsylvania, when I first started kind of heading to the Midwest, and I saw Iowa deer for the first time, I was like, "Good Lord, man, these Iowa deer are huge." And then my buddy that lived in Iowa was like, "Dude," he's like, "Wait till you see a Kansas buck." He was like, "Those things look like Angus." He's like, "They're like body size." He's like, "They're bigger than deer in Iowa." And I was like, that can't be true. I was like, these deer are huge. And then I go to Kansas and I'm like, holy smokes, man, these things are giants, like just body type, right? Body size. And I can't imagine seeing like a 300-pound whitetail.
Oh
Like that would
yeah,
just
it's
be,
crazy. Yes, like a cow. It's
yeah.
nuts. I'm like, is this broadhead really going to go through this thing?
Makes you
And
start
it
to
will.
question your setup a little bit.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But that's exactly right.
Man, you got to break out the old elk setup for that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Like,
right. Put my iron
like
wheel on there and let it go.
that's right. That's right, man. Man, but speaking of this season coming up, dude, what do you have in the hopper for Aussie that's coming out that you can let people know about that
Yeah.
that
So
might be
so
hitting the store or might be hitting the socials or whatever the case is.
yeah, we've got one piece I'm super excited about. I've been working on it for 2 years. It's a whitetail puffy jacket. It's quiet. It's got Primaloft gold in it, which is the highest rated Primaloft. So since
Hmm.
synthetic, it can get wet and still hold its heat, unlike down. So really excited about that. It's reversible. It's black on the inside. So if you
Hmm.
got some ground blind stuff going on, you can turn it inside out. And then it's a awesome layer piece to wear. I mean, if it's dry, you can wear it by itself. It's that quiet. But if you want to layer it under like the Sherpa jacket or midweight jacket that's windproof, man, that is going to be special. And it's
Yeah.
super packable. I mean, you can ball that thing up in a little ball, dump it down in your pack, and you always got it there. So, real excited about that. That'll be coming towards the end of August.
Nice.
And then we've got a leafy jacket coming. And I wanted to
Nice.
do that, because I got on that traditional kick. I was like, buddy, I got to get a little more camouflage. And so I said, we're gonna, and then I aborted that mission. But we've got a really cool, quiet leafy jacket coming. We've got a late season hoodie. It's windproof. It's thicker than a midweight hoodie coming, and we've got some
Nice.
fingerless merino gloves coming. So those are kind of the main products, and then of course we've got our staples, and
Yeah.
we went with we had quite a few hunters that wanted the full collar that we have for rifle hunting and stuff. So we all of our tops now will have you can select whether you want the full collar or the bow hunter collar. I love the bow hunting collar because it's never in my way,
Hmm.
and so you'll have that option. We're coming out with talls this year. So we'll have longer inseams, longer sleeve lengths for the taller guys, and then we're coming out with smalls this year. We'll have small sizes, so some of the ladies will be able to get into that, and some of the kids. So we're
Nice.
growing, man, and just so humbled and appreciative of the support that we've gotten. In 5 years, we've really grown the brand, starting to get some recognition. First trade show we ever did, I was like, man, when I finally see like an Osseo vest walking around somewhere, and I don't know who the guy is,
Right.
we will have arrived. And
Right.
sure enough, on the trade show circuit this year, we saw quite a few guys repping the gear and coming
Nice.
up and talking to us and telling us stories. So
Nice.
yeah, excited about the year.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I've been wearing it since this late winter, early spring. Did a lot of scouting in the gear that I have, and it's awesome. Like it just works, dude. Like you guys make great stuff. Not surprised that you're successful because it's great stuff built by great people. You obviously being one of them. And that's the most important thing, man, is that we support the people who are passionate about the space, about the resource, and about the people who are partaking in the space, And so you do all those things, you check all those boxes. I'm super stoked for that puffy. Like I know we were messaging back and forth, and I saw you sent me a little screen grab of it, and I was able to kind of take a peek, because that literally, I'm kind of a minimalist, like with my kit. Like my kit's usually a base layer, and then like a light for early in the year, and then like a midweight, for as you get into like that October time frame. And then my bottoms stay the same the rest of the year. And the only thing that changes is like my base layer might get a little heavier, and that's about it. And then on top, it's usually just like some type of like midweight hoodie, and then a puffy, and then a vest. And that's, I'll rock that all the way through the winter, like through late season, And I might need to put a jacket on if like the wind chill gets real bad or something like that. But the puffy is like this is a staple in my kit. So I'm super stoked that you guys have that coming, because that's like
Primaloft Gold, man. We did a ton of research on that. There's a big difference between Primaloft Silver, and Primaloft Gold. It's more expensive, but the weight to warmth ratio is pretty different. And so we did a lot of testing with it, and I'm excited about it, man. Just to wear under that Sherpa jacket. I'm from South Carolina. I get pretty cold when I get out to Kansas and stuff. And so putting that under that Sherpa jacket, it's going to be super insulation and still very, very quiet.
Yeah, and I know like for people that are listening, like the collar, that was one thing early on, like in the spring, I was talking with Andy May, and he had just mentioned to me, he was like, dude, he was like, one of the best things is the collar for a bow hunter. He was like, that's one thing. And I was like, I was like, I sometimes don't even think about it anymore, because I'm so used to the collar not being in my way, where I'm like, I'm never going to have an option where there's not a collar that's not in my way. Right.
Yeah.
And then he mentioned that to me, and I was like, damn, I was like, you know what? You're right. I was like, that is always a pain in the ass. I was like, and the fact that they solved for it for a bow hunter, I was like, that's.
Yeah, everybody cloned everything, right? Every single premium line out there had that full collar, and I was always just taking it and rolling it in. Rolling it in, I'd forget about it and get out, and I'd be like, man, if I had to shoot down. And then I saw multiple videos. One of the guy that works with Chad, Cameron Deere, he's got a video of him hitting his collar. The string hitting his collar, missed the deer. Yeah. And I was like, we got to fix this. So we actually got patent pending on that thing. So I'm pretty excited to see if that goes all the way through. So that, it's pretty neat.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on, buddy. Before I let you go, though, let people know where they can follow you, find out more about what Osseo has going on, and be able to be aware of like when new product drops and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So appreciate that. Osseo Gear, Instagram, Facebook, and OsseoGear.com is a website. And me personally is Joe at OsseoGear.com, and then Joe Miles Hunting on all socials, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. I think there's even a TikTok that we're doing now. We've gotten real sophisticated with the Chinese now, so we're all TikToked out.
Right, you got a balloon satellite up there somewhere floating around.
That's right, an Osseo weather balloon. That's right.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then there's a newsletter sign up on the website too, right?
There is, yeah.
Yeah, so people should sign up for that.
And email guys and text guys, you can sign up for text too. And all of our drops, sales, all that goes to those guys first. So, that's where it all is.
Well, brother, I appreciate you coming on. I'm hoping I get to see you in 3D one of these days soon. Maybe even we do a hunt together or something like that one of these days.
Need to. Yeah, that'll be good.
spend a little
Absolutely.
time with you. Maybe we'll do a little grappling. Maybe we'll.
Yeah, well, oh boy, yeah.
Oh,
I'm definitely in a higher weight class than you, but I got a real sneaking suspicion you're gonna ball me up pretty quick. I got to get my wrist stretched out so I can tap fast.
right. Me you, and Chad. I always threaten him with a good time, and
Yeah, yeah,
he said he's bringing a tire iron, so we'll
yeah,
see.
yeah. That's right. I'll have my Sig, my GBRS Sig in my back pocket so I can pull
Right,
that back.
right. Awesome, buddy. Well, I appreciate you, man. I'm looking forward to your season. Always look forward to chatting with you. You're one of the good dudes. Love what you're doing with Osseo. I'm proud to be a part of it. And just looking forward to great things this year, man.
Thanks so much, Clint. We appreciate it more than you know, buddy.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. And if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And hell, while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there too. And before I shut this thing down, we need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Osseo Gear, Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, and Genesee Beer. And until next time, we'll see y'all.